many of us can say we've served the community and veteran causes for more than 61 years? Well, I have a gentleman here who has done just that. Welcome to One on One. I'm Bina Pandya, and I have Bill Burrell, Brampton Citizen of the Year, with me. Welcome, Bill.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Bill,
nice sunny day outside.
How long have you lived in Brampton?
79 years.
79 years. And how large was the city when you were born?
Oh, around 3,000.
Around 3,000. You must have seen a lot of changes in the city.
Oh, an awful lot of changes. Gridlock now. Sorry, Mayor Fellow.
Growing up, what were the schools like in the Brampton area?
Well, when I was going to school, there was two, McHugh and Central. The railway track divided the town, and we would play sports against each other.
What sort of sports did you play?
Well, baseball in the summer and hockey in the winter.
And other than playing sports, what other activities did kids do when you grew up?
Oh, we could play in the street because there wasn't too many cars. You could play road hockey all summer.
What was the best thing about living in Brampton at that time?
Well, you knew everybody.
You knew everybody. It was
doors weren't locked.
It was a friendly city?
Oh, yes. Very friendly.
Growing up, what did you think you wanted to do or become as a profession after you finished school?
Well, I was always interested in airplanes, and I thought I'd love to be an aeronautical engineer. But I didn't like going to school too much, and I just couldn't cut the mustard, so I was out working at 16.
What type of job did you have at the age of 16?
I was with Brown's Bread.
And what did you do there?
Well, I was in Toronto, and from Bathurst to Mimico and the lake to Woodbridge, I took bread out if the drivers were running short or something, like a Boy Friday or Girl Friday or something. Look after all the drivers on the west side of Toronto with Brown's Bread. It was interesting.
And what prompted you afterwards to join the Canadian Armed Forces?
Well, I went to church one Sunday in Toronto, and they were having a memorial service for one of their parishioners that had died, and he was in the Air Force. And I thought, oh. So I went down Monday morning and joined up.
And for you growing up, how important was the church in your life?
Well, it was First Baptist Church in Brampton, the one that burnt down a while ago, and we rebuilt it. I served in all positions there, and then after the war, I was Veterans Land Act out in the country, and I went to a little church, Harrison's on the 5th line, which is now Torbram, and I was out there for 35 years, I think. Served them as usher and treasurer and one thing and another. To me, you should be a church.
And when you decided to sort of join the armed forces or whatever, how did your family react to your decision?
Well, I don't think Mother was too happy, but I figured you might as well go now because I'd be called up in another year, half a year or so. I was 17 and a half.
Right.
And I'd heard so much from Dad about the First World War, the muck and mire and all that. I thought, well, I'll join they always called us the Brill Cream Boys.
Right.
And after you did your flights and that, you come home and you slept in white sheets. So I thought that was a lot better than in the muck and mire in the trenches.
How big of an influence was your father in your life?
Well, he taught me right from wrong. And he told me, you only get out of this world what you put into it. So I've had, that's the way I tried to live. And I've had so many accolades in that I say I gotta live to be as old as Methuselah to give back to what I've received.
Well, this year you were Brampton Citizen of the Year. How did you feel when you heard the news?
I think I dropped the phone.
Really?
When I got it, yeah. It's just one of those things well, I don't even think you dream of it, you know. It just was out of the air, and I was startled.
Right.
Startled. And then the phone started ringing and mail coming, and, you know, it was terrific. Terrific.
You know, you've continually sort of given to the community in any way, whether your whole life. How much of your personal time did you have to give up?
Oh, not that much, I don't think, because in the winter with hockey and that, the kids would come with me, or you know, and I know I went to Sault Ste. Marie a couple of times with hockey in the spring with the North-South series, and one or two of my boys would come with me, and they would enjoy it. And my kids played, girls played softball in the summer, and the boys played hockey and hockey in the winter and lacrosse in the summer. And we managed to get to their games if possible.
Okay. Yeah. Stay with us. We have lots more coming up with Bill Burrell and his war stories. Welcome back, and with me I have Bill Burrell. Bill, you were just 18 when you went away to war. Was that like scary for you, the thought of going away and leaving Brampton?
No, I think it was more of an adventure when you're a young kid. It was just something I thought I would do, and I didn't give it a thought of going away or leaving home, because I had spent a year in Toronto working, so not that I wanted to get away from home, but I just thought it was time. Well, it was time to go when they called you, and so away I went.
Were you prepared for what you were going to see there?
Well, we had a lot of training, so we have a rough idea what's going to happen when we're up there, if that's what you mean, when we're attacked and one thing and another. So we have a rough idea what's going to go on,
now,
and we were well prepared.
You were a gunner there. What exactly is that?
Well, they have a mid-upper turret with 4 machine guns and a tail turret with 4 machine guns, and they have a single gun in the nose. A lot of our 4-engine jobs. But apparently Fritzy was pretty smart, and he would come along and fly straight under you, but have his guns elevated. So they were raking us. My understanding is they would shoot us from underneath, because you were taught don't swat a bee unless he's bothering you. So we didn't fire at an enemy aircraft unless he was attacking us, because he might have seen us at night. So they cut a hole in the bottom of the 4-engine bomber I was in and put a .5 gun, a heavier gun, down there, and that's where I was, sitting down, looking down and back, and anything I could see wasn't going to hurt us.
Right.
And one day the mid-upper gunner was sick, and I had to fly up there, and I told the pilot I don't want to fly up there again, because you could spin around in 360 degrees and you could see what you're flying into. And I take my hat off to the pilot and those guys, because I wanted to get back where I was, and I could only see what isn't going to hurt us.
Did you ever think that you may not come back?
No, I don't think it crossed my mind.
No.
It didn't cross my mind. Dad said, if you have a bad feeling, asked if you can be excused, but I never had a bad feeling. I guess I had faith or something.
And you also received your operational wings?
Hmm?
You also received your operational wings?
Yeah,
there?
that's the little gold bar. That's.
And what was the significance of that?
32 trips, or what we called a tour. Tour of operations, and you'll see some fellas have one, and there's one fella's got 2 bars underneath. He would do 3 tours.
How did you feel when you knew that you were coming home finally?
Well, that was great, but I'd volunteered to go to the Pacific, and but I thought it would be nice to get home for a while before we go over there, and that's what they did. We shipped us down to St. Hubert and get ready to go to the Pacific, but we never did get there.
What are some of the most important lessons or things that you learned from your experience over there?
Oh, when you're flying in a crew, it's teamwork, hey? Just like sports. And when you don't sauce back, you don't lip back, and each person had a job to do. If you saw a fighter, you told the pilot to corkscrew, or the bombardier told him to keep it level, and the navigator would tell him when to turn, and this, and that. It's a team. It's like a hockey game. It's a good coordinated team, and if you're not all together on the team, then you might have a problem.
And did you know what you were going to do when you came back to Brampton?
Well, I didn't finish school, so I couldn't be an aeronautical engineer. Like most of us, we go to work where our dad did. My dad worked at the Dale Estate, largest floral concern in the British Empire at one time, and they had a stamp. They would stamp their rose leaf, Dale.
Right.
So I was working there.
And what were you doing?
I was in the plant department, and one thing and another, and after the war, all the small towns started to get mail delivery, and I thought, well, I'll just put my application in. And of course, back in '47 and that, there was no unions, and Dale State, at a heavy time of the year, you had to work on Sunday, and I told them I wouldn't work on Sunday, so they fired me. Oh. And that week I got the letter saying, come on in for the post office, you've been hired. So it just worked out. Getting fired worked out great for me, because Dale Estate is kaput now.
Well, at least you turned a positive into a negative. Yeah. Where was the post office then?
Down near the Four Corners of Brampton. The building's still there with the clock tower up above, and there were 6 of us, twice a day, and once on Saturday. Now you don't get it on Saturday, and you don't get it twice a day, and if you're in a new subdivision, you don't get it. You go to the corner.
That's right.
But there were 6 of us, and I always tell the new minister at Baptist Church, our little church delivered 50% of the mail. 3 of us, original carriers, went to First Baptist Church in Brampton.
Oh, that's
now there's over 200 carriers, so that tells you how big Brampton is.
Well, coming up next, lots more with Bill Burrell, and you'll find out why he was a model employee. Welcome back. Joining me, I have Bill Burrell. Bill, I believe you worked for Canada Post for 37 years, 10 months, and 20 days. And
you got that down pat.
And never missed a day of work.
No.
You must have either really loved your job or weren't allowed to call in sick. Which was it?
Well, no, we had 15 days a year sick time. And I just thought it's the best insurance you can have. And my dad wouldn't take time off work unless he's sick. So, and that scar I got there was playing hockey one afternoon in the wintertime, and I was at work the next day, and Dad said, oh, you're a fool. But I just, and after a while it got so bad that I wouldn't take a day off if I had a little cold or something, and I just thought, it's the best insurance. When I left, I had 555 days sick time, and if I had had a heart attack, I could have been off for a couple of years with full pay.
Wow.
So to me, that's what sick time is. A lot of other people don't think that, but I think it's insurance, and you don't use it unless you need it.
Well, in addition to working, you were very instrumental in promoting local hockey in the Brampton area.
Oh, yeah.
Why did you do this? Like, how did you develop your keen interest in hockey to begin with?
Well, in the 40s, Brampton was divided into 4 wards, north, south, east, west. West was Montreal Canadiens, east was Boston Bruins, and the south was Toronto Maple Leafs, and the north ward was Chicago Blackhawks. And we had kids hockey for bantam and midget players, and that's where I used to play. And when I got to be a midget, I was coaching and refereeing in the bantam, and I liked the game. And my first year in midget in 1940, I got the Bates Award, a little wee thing like that, as the best midget hockey player in Brampton. So that's why I thought eventually I might play hockey. And my dad knew some of the Ed Wiley Young Rangers in Toronto and that, but spending 2 years overseas and that, you didn't have the ability when you come home. But I just liked hockey, and I was walking across the Four Corners delivering mail one day, and Eddie Bensel called me and said he was just appointed coach of the Brampton Juveniles, and he wanted somebody to manage, and that got me into hockey on the executive level.
You were also inducted into the Brampton Hall, Sports Hall.
Sports Hall of Fame, yeah.
How did you feel receiving that honor after all of your hard work in promoting local hockey?
Well, that was quite an honor too. But I told him, I said my dad should be in here because he played against Howie Morenz and Bill and Bun Cook and some of these great guys, and he was on OHA championship team of 1914, 4 years before the National Hockey League. He eventually did go in 10 years after me, but I thought it was quite an honor to go in Brampton Sports Hall of Fame.
I also believe you became the curator after you were inducted in?
Well, after I was inducted, I wrote a letter and said, it's quite an honor. Is there anything I can do to help? And so they took me on board. And I was on the selection committee, and then when we went to the new arena, We had a little Hall of Fame. We always had a Hall of Fame, but we had a cupboard there, and we put in some artifacts, and they gave me the key and told me to look after it, or asked me if I would. Yeah.
All this local hockey that you were involved with meant you're spending a lot of time with children. You must have a love for kids.
Oh yeah, I have 5.
5 kids. Did they all get involved in the hockey with you, the boys?
2 boys,
Uh-huh.
and they played in Brampton, and then when the people got, the enrollment got so big, I was president of Brampton Minor Hockey when we had to tell the country kids they couldn't play because we didn't have the ice time. But luckily, my boys could go to Woodbridge because I was living out on Airport Road at that time under Veterans Land Act house, and you're supposed to play with your nearest center. So and then when Chinguacousy started, Bramley or whatever you want to call it, when their minor hockey started, my 2 boys played there.
Now you've also moved back into the house in Brampton that your grandfather built. What was the reasoning behind that one?
Well, that's where I was born and raised. Grandpa was built in 1913, and when Grandpa moved to Toronto, Mom and Dad moved in there. Actually, it's kind of a fib. I think I was born in David Street, but 6 months later I moved in, so I said I've been born and raised there. And when Dad passed away, he left the house to me and my sister, or I and my sister, and when Mom passed away, I thought, well, I'm moving back in. So one of my sons is a builder, Fred, he's a bricklayer, and that he gutted the house and made a few renovations, and I'm back home where I was born and raised.
How does it feel when you sort of sit outside and you look around and you realize this is where you started so long ago?
Well, if there's anybody in Brampton listening, there's 2 houses on Elizabeth Street at the end of Craig that are almost identical. And when I was a kid, there were only 2 houses on that side of the street. And so when anybody walks by in that, I like to tell them all about it if they want to know.
Well, you must have a lot of fond memories in that house.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
The entire area also must be very dear to you.
Oh, yeah. As a kid, you could go across the street to Ann Minnie Coyne and get a cookie when you wanted it. And we had a swing on the veranda with the awnings that come down the side and the awnings that went out over, like some stores used to have it. We had a swing. I'd sleep out there all summer.
Well, stay with us. We have lots more coming up with Bill Burrell. Welcome back with Bill Burrell. Bill, you've also been lately involved with the Legion.
Yes.
And you're extremely involved with the Poppy Drive. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, after the war, most fellas, I joined the Legion, but and my dad was past president. But if you're not active in it, I kind of let it drop. Right. I was so busy in minor hockey. And then in 1996, I guess it was, after 20 years of secretary of 2 leagues around Brampton, I retired. And a very good friend of mine, George Potsy Burrows, everybody in Brampton knows George, we played hockey in the town championship team in 1951. Right. He says, come on up to Legion, Bill, we need a little help. So I thought, well, I'll go up with a little help. And next thing I knew, I ended up as chairman of the Poppy Committee, filling the boots of Al McNair, who played on that championship team in 51 with us. He was the chairman and taught me the ropes, and next thing I knew, I'm the chairman. And it's a great job. I've got a committee of 40 people, and just don't look at their backs when I hit them with the cat of nine tails. And they're a great bunch, and whenever anything happens good, we've given defibrillators to the fire department a few years ago, and this year we give the police defibrillators for their boats down in Lake Ontario. We've given money to the hospital and different things. We can't save money if we don't spend it. We can give it to some Legion benefits, but we like to keep it locally if we can. It's just been going up year after year after year.
Well, I think since you've taken over, the donations have doubled every year. So you must be doing something right. Why do you think poppies are significant to us and our history?
Well, I think we're getting a little more publicity maybe, and a year ago with the 60th anniversary, it was fabulous. And this year with wreaths for what we haven't made, Holland Liberation. I just put a check in the other day. We're up to 68,000, and I've got a couple of wreaths aren't paid for yet, so we're going to hit 70,000 this year. And when I took over, it was around 34,000, and then we went up about 10,000 every year. We were going up, and it's just you have a good crew, and they're great workers. They do all the work, and George and I have been at down at Queen's Park with Linda Jeffries. So I don't know whether you were going to ask about that, but and we were recognized down there. But if it wasn't this crew of 40 people that are behind me helping me, we wouldn't get the accolades we get.
Well, I'm sure you must be, you know, thrilled with the success of the Poppy program.
Terrific.
But how did you feel when MPP Linda Jeffries read the statement in the provincial parliament about you for your contributions?
That was something. That was something. And if you've ever been to Queen's Park or watch them on TV, there's always banter back and forth. And when she stood up, they must have had an agenda or something, but they didn't say boo. And then when it was over, we got a standing ovation right at Queen's Park. Yeah.
Well, that's really something. And I know also Natalie Baines recognized you in Parliament for the Brampton Citizens of the Year, and that was read. That statement was read on May 11. So that's another great accomplishment.
Oh yeah. He sent me the letter, and the Minister Veterans Affairs was out to the Korean Wall a week or so ago, and I was speaking to her and mentioned it, and she says, and I showed her the thing I got, and she said it's a file 13 or something. She says not very many people get that. He sent me a copy of it, embossed in a nice letterhead and everything.
Wow, that's really something to be recognized by so many people, and you know, at all different levels of government, also not just locally. What do you think is the best thing about living in Brampton?
Well, it's lost its small townness, and I just have a bad habit of saying I'll be there in 5 minutes. So sometimes you don't get out your driveway in 5 minutes, and it's getting too big. But it's I'm in the old part downtown. My neighbor is the former Premier Bill Davis. He's on Main Street, and I'm right behind on Elizabeth. And it's the people you know. People like Bill Davis, he's been there quite a while, and George Burrell that's been there a long time, and there's quite a few Bramptonians, but old Bramptonians, there's not that many left. As Donnie Haynes, a real estate fella that goes to our church, said to me, he said, "You got to remember, Bill, there's not too many old Bramptons around. There might be people that have been there 50 years, but that's not old Brampton. You got to be born and raised there to be old Brampton." And we're few and far between now. It's getting less and less all the time. But I like the old town. I go downtown, get my hair cut, and the Legion's downtown, my church is downtown, and it's a great town. But it's not, it's a city now.
Well, I'm sure Brampton is a much better city and much richer because they've had someone like you living there all these years. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And that wraps up another episode of One on One. I hope to see you next time.